We're joined from Jackson by Mary Sanders Ferriss, the owner, operator, founder of Ferriss and Company Interior Design, graduate of Mississippi State University. We thank you so much for joining us. I've got a room full here with me at Velma Jackson High School. We're recording this for all of our friends in Madison County Schools, Madison Central High School, Ridgeland High School, Germantown High School, the Academic Options Center, and our YouTube channel. So we thank you so much for joining us because we're in the architecture and construction career cluster. And this is a career that kind of gets forgotten about, but is extremely important, extremely fun, and from what I found out, extremely difficult.
Yeah, that's true.
All right. So we have had a chance to look at some of your work, but before we get into what all it is you do and some of the people you work with and some of the skills you have, take us back. You went to Mississippi State University,
I
but that is
did.
not where you originally wanted to go. So tell us about your college program and about a degree in interior design.
Yeah, so I actually started at Millsaps College and was a theater major and did set design and loved it. And then after my sophomore year, was really thinking about like long-term life goals and started looking at the idea of interior design because I was doing set design and I really liked that. I was really more of like a back of like techie type person more than I was an actress or actor. And so I started researching programs in state and out of state. I looked at out of state Savannah College of Art and Design, and it was very private, very expensive. And then I started looking in state, and Mississippi State had at the time and still does like an amazing program. It was accredited. It made a lot more financial sense for me just to switch. I wanted to go to Ole Miss, and at that time they were phasing out their interior design program, and it wasn't an accredited program anyway. And so we, in about a month's time, decided to make the switch and transfer to state, and it was probably one of the best decisions I've ever made. So
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I've looked at some of the program there, and it is very, for people that are artistic, there's a lot of art involved, but there's also a lot of learning building codes, learning, a lot of basic construction things, a lot of things about architecture, a lot of things with blueprints, a lot of things about safety I never thought about. So this is a
yeah.
very all encompassing because everybody sees the building go up, but they don't have any idea. Once that building is built, it has to be made for people, and it has to be inviting and welcoming to customers, and it has to be very fitting to the client that's paying for the person to have it designed.
Yeah, no, it's very true. I mean, interior design, like a lot of people think of it as, I always kind of say interior design is not interior decorating. And interior design is, when I started in school, actually it had originated in the School of Home Economics, having been a very female driven career path at that time. And so it was like, we were in the same school as like nutrition and fashion design. And it didn't really like, as the career had evolved, it didn't really make a lot of sense. And so when I was a senior, we actually transitioned into the College of Architecture, Art and Design, and that whole college was built together. And so those kind of like classes where we worked with the other people in the other disciplines, like we would do a project with architecture, we would do a project with graphic design. That is really, especially from a commercial standpoint, what the career looks like day to day, versus necessarily just always going out and picking colors and furniture. And that does exist. Like there's nothing wrong with that. And that is a path. And that's one of the great things about interior design. There's like, you get the degree and there's about 20 different things you can do with it, if not more. And honestly, like I've done a variety of those things. And that was actually kind of how I ended up back here doing what I do now. And I think that it's like people think of it as kind of a pigeonhole degree, but there's a lot of avenues that you can kind of go down. And so I think that is like, it is a very technical degree. It's really important. Like life safety is very important. People being able to get in and out of buildings and fires, picking finishes that won't immediately go up in flames. If you're designing a hotel, and really understanding kind of the user experience, and how people kind of use space and what makes them comfortable and things like that. So it's kind of psychology and science and technology. It's a very interesting field to go into.
Yeah, absolutely. And we looked at one of the places you designed, the Salamukis there in Fondren. You showed the ice cream shop, and our friend Jeff Good does a great job down there running the restaurant. But somebody like Jeff Good is not going to know, the building code for Mississippi where you've got to have X amount of space to be ADA compliant to make sure your door is wide enough when you build it so that somebody with a wheelchair can get in and out. When you've got
Mhm.
to make sure that the lighting fixtures aren't hanging down too low. You've got to make sure the HVAC is not coming down too low. It's got to be safe for everybody. And if he wants it to be a certain color, you've got to say, hey, we can make that, but the material that we put to make it that color has to meet this requirement as far as fire resistance.
Mhm. Yeah, that's exactly right. There's tons of codes. I mean, there's a licensing program. You get licensed as an interior designer. You take a big test after being in the like, you have to practice for a few years before you can take your test. But there's definitely a lot more to it. And it's important. I mean, ideally, especially from a public space perspective, you're designing public space for everyone. So it's really important that people in wheelchairs can be able to use it comfortably. If you're blind, you actually like understand like how far things stick out from walls, and you can kind of, even though you may not know a space, you know some of the parameters around a commercial space. If you can't hear, it's important to have like fire alarms that flash. I mean, there's all kinds of life
Wow.
safety that goes um into
Wow.
design. And that's all levels. I mean, that's interiors, that's architects have to think it through it. Engineers think through that. I mean, there's a team of people that design the building. So,
Yeah, and then where you come into play, you're working with a lot of tradespeople. You're working with a lot of contractors. When you're saying I need the light fixture to be like this, you're working with an electrician that's been trained on that, and you work together with them. So even if somebody doesn't want to go to school to be even to go to college, you're working with a lot of contractors and tradespeople that are always doing work in all these buildings around not just Jackson, but all around the state and all around the South.
oh, I love being on site. That's my favorite part of my job. I love working with subcontractors. I have an electrician I work with all the time, and I think we have a very love-hate relationship. But I mean, you have to really love your contractors, because if you don't and you fight, like I'm actually, one of the reasons I'm successful is I have a great team that I work with, and some really good contractors in town that work well with me, and they know how to, produce what I want to do. We're able to like solve problems together on the front end. There's varying ways that you can create contracts. Like there's, you have your typical bid process where you create a whole set of drawings and send it out to a bunch of different people and they price it. Then you've also got kind of, more of like a design build process, which I do a lot with restaurants, because we're kind of working from a budget. Because in all industries, there's only, you have a certain amount of money you can spend, and if you set people up on the front end and you go over budget, you can really like cause issues for long-term business growth, because they can be, you know tied to that debt. And so you've really got to work with them and kind of what their project budget is, work with the contractor to figure out how to do what you want within that budget. And that's one of the biggest important pieces of working with a lot of the subcontractors, is really trying to figure out how to get, for lack of a better way of saying it, kind of like the most bang for your buck.
Yep.
And very important in restaurants, because restaurants are a very tight profit margin and it's a very competitive business. And so we try to make sure we set everybody up for success. So,
Yeah, because just off the top of my head, when we were looking at some of your work, I said, look, she designed this, but here's all the people that were involved in this. You had trim carpenters, you had painters, you had HVAC, you had electricians. And that was just
mhm.
off the top of my head on people that you have to work with and people that are also a part of this process that can make really good money as well.
Yeah, it's a great, I mean, I think a lot of times, like tradesmen and people that are working in those, like that's such an important part of our industry. And it's such a like, it's such a great way to make money, because there's so many, it's needed. It's kind of skipped some generations. Like people have kind of thought the only path there is to go to college, and that's just not true for everybody.
Yep.
And it's not true. I mean, some of it's financial, but some of it's also like you're just not, some people are not made for college. Like my stepson, if you were to send him to a typical college, like he would hate it. It's just not his, it's not what he would, it's not how he's wired. He
Yeah.
works in the kitchen. He likes to work. I mean, he wants to
Yep.
be on his feet doing stuff all the time. So, we've got him going to culinary school, but it's a totally different path than sitting at a desk all day long. And I think people that want to work with their hands and do that, like skilled trades, are very important.
Yeah. Absolutely. Now, obviously, one thing I like to talk about with everybody that's a business owner, even though, even if kids are not interested in anything architecture, construction, anything interior design, I think entrepreneurship speaks across industries. And you've opened your own business. I know you guys are doing very well. We've seen some of your work, just amazing. Some of the things that you guys have done around Jackson area, all over in all the way in New Orleans, other places. So, I have kids all the time, and I'm just gonna speak for all the other teachers that'll see this. I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to be my own boss. But it's not just let's just open the doors and start making money. So talk about some things that entrepreneurs might struggle with because obviously you were trained to be a great interior designer, but you've got to learn how to run a business kind of on your own
Yeah, it's they should really teach this at school. Uh, but
while we're doing it.
yeah. Um, so I think that my first like more than anything with entrepreneurship is it's not just about working for yourself. It's about picking something that you love doing because you do it all the time. And I hate to say that. It's not like I believe in like a work-life balance and things like that, but at the same time when you're an entrepreneur and you're responsible for other people's income and you're responsible for, whatever it is in your project, it is in your head constantly trying to figure out how to make it work. What's best? Well, what are the best decisions? And if you don't love what you're doing, and it is not worth it by any means. And that seems very like Pollyanna, but at the same time, it's very
Yeah.
true. And so I think that starting and learning from other people first is also very important. I think getting your experience from whether it's other entrepreneurs or other businesses. Some of my best experiences have been working for people who actually did it really badly, and I learned how not to do it. And so every experience you have, like leading up to entrepreneurship, you will learn from. And even if it's not like your ideal situation, you will look back once you're doing it and be like, oh, that's what I learned from that piece. And I've done many different things. I've got a very broad kind of career path leading to what I do now. And I at the time thought I was a little nutty. Like I was like, I'm just skipping all over. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm changing my mind. But now that I look back on it, like I started out in like very high-end hotel design, living in DC. I hated it. Like I did not like working for that level of design. Like I felt like I was designing, you know, $500,000 rugs. It was crazy to me. It did not work with my brain. But I did like food and beverage. And I learned a lot because I learned how to run a business and how to have like a really good, like architecture program because I was in an interior design architecture firm. And then from there, I just gave up interior design because I thought I hated it. And I became a sales rep and ended up going and doing sales actually because I used to work for a toy store when I was in high school. And so I was like, oh, I'm going to go work for this company and do like wholesale sales for toys and kids. So then I learned kind of a sales process, which again had nothing to do with interior design, but I would do some interior design on the side, which is kind of when I did the original Babalu in Jackson, and worked with Wearburner Allen on that project. And then I like went back to DC and did sales for wallpaper and then learned all about that. Worked for a furniture manufacturer, learned all about how to make furniture, did metal manufacturing, learned how to weld and do that. And then all of those things, which seem like completely far apart, make sense in what I do every day. Like I was talking to a metal worker yesterday about how to build a custom table that I need to do for a restaurant. And then like, getting clients is sales. I mean, that's part of it. You have to like be able to sell your product and understand your product. And then, a lot of what we do in hospitality is some level of custom or creating something from nothing. So like working for a furniture manufacturer was really important. Understanding how that pricing works. Now I know to negotiate my pricing down because I know where margins are. So it's really like what seemed very strange to me when I was younger and very like, I couldn't ever really get settled, really actually like completely built the foundation in which I work now. And from the minute I kind of started restaurant design, I loved it. And that really like kicked off that part of my career. But at the same time, I take lessons from everything I've done. So my biggest thing as an entrepreneur is like, listen to people, learn what you don't know. Don't be scared to ask questions. Just because you're the boss doesn't mean you know everything. And really like know what you're good at and know what you're not good at and figure out who to hire to do the things you're not good at doing. It's like my best
Yeah.
advice.
And at the end of the day, you've got to be able to have good customer service
Yes.
because,
Yes.
people say, well, I'm the boss. Well, the boss needs the customer more than the customer needs the boss. So you've got to have good customer service, whether you want to be, even if you just want to be an employee, people that have good customer service skills and good communication skills, it's amazing how much quicker they can move up in a company.
Yeah, no, it's 100% true. I mean, all of my staff in my life has to be able to talk to our customers. We're a customer driven business. We have customers and then we also design for their customers. So we're really like pushing, it's important for us to understand that.
Now, before I get to the students' questions, we were looking at some of your designs on your website, and we recognize a lot of these places. So tell us some places that the kids might recognize around town that you've had a hand in designing that a lot of people go and eat or a lot of people go and hang out.
Okay. Let's see. So we talked about Salad Mookie's. We designed that. Aplos in Highland Village and also Ridgeland. We've done, let's see, we did Cultivation Food Hall before they closed. The fun part about the restaurant industry is a lot of things I've done have closed because that's the nature of the industry. We did do Babalu, the original Babalu. That was a huge part of my career. I designed those all over the Southeast. I designed Kessler Prime in Renaissance.
Twisted Turnip.
I'm trying to think what's open. Twisted Turnip, they're open. Yes, perfect. There is
And
one there in y'all's area. I
and
don't do a
Polito
ton.
and
And
Polito and
Polito.
Bellhaven.
Yes, I don't do tons. We're about to do a Tuk Tuk Boom in Madison.
Oh
We've
wow.
got that coming. Yeah. And a couple of other things that we've got kind of like we're playing around with in Madison right now. I also do, I mean, people think of us as restaurants, but we do hotels, we do office buildings. I've probably done every type of design except for maybe like hospitals. We do a little bit of healthcare if it's like smaller, like dental offices and things like that, but we don't really get in healthcare. Healthcare is very specific, so we don't really get into that because I don't have the knowledge base for that.
Yeah, but that's a good point is that hospitals need interior designers.
100%. And it's actually a very important part. I was
Uh,
recently in the hospital for about a month with my dad, and I was like, this is depressing. And so you
yeah,
really want to be in a space that like feels good. And um, that's part of what we do is like really trying to make
yeah,
your environment comfortable. You don't think about your environment as being important until it's not.
yeah.
And then you start to realize. So
Absolutely. Well, I do have some really good questions. I'll get to as many of these as I can. This is Demontre
okay.
Strange. He's in 10th grade, one of our football, basketball, and baseball players here. So he plays everything. And he asked, how long does it take for someone to be a licensed interior designer?
Um, there's a couple of different paths, but usually you would have a 4-year degree and then it takes 2 years outside of school if you work full time. And that's when you're able to take a test. I think that's still the rules, but
Yeah, I know it varies from state to state, but I know in Mississippi that is the path. I like
that's what
this
it was
one.
when I took it.
I like this one. This is Justice Conway. She's in 9th grade, one of our basketball players. And she asked, how long does it usually take you to come up with a design?
Well, I should tell my clients that it takes a very long time because I want to charge them to take a very long time. But honestly, it really depends. A lot of times our best projects, like I'll be thinking about for a while, but the design itself may take a couple of days. Just really there's actually like that's actually a great question because there's a formal design process that really if you follow it, it actually it works. And I talked to a lot of people who maybe didn't go to school or didn't work for firms who really followed that process. And they asked me kind of like how we get so many layers in our designs. And then how we get like client sign off and things like that. And a lot of it is the process. And so the process is really like you start, it's kind of like a funnel. So you start really big conceptually and you give a bunch of ideas and you show people a couple of different versions and varying things. And then you slowly start to like whittle it down. So it's like conceptual, which is also schematic design. Then you go into design development where you really begin to design the project. And depending the type of the project, that could take from, that could take 2 weeks, it could take 2 months, it could take a year. Really, it just depends on the
Wow.
length of the size of the project. And then you would move into really kind of what we call like documentation, which is construction drawing. So we do produce architectural drawing sets. I mean, my drawing set
Wow.
looks no different than architects, and we're added as a consultant. So we would do that, and then you would go into like documentation slash, spec writing is also a part of that, and then purchasing, and then actual like implementation of the project. So, and then construction without that. So there's like a good thing to follow. And that, again, it depends on the project. I've had Jeff Good called me in December. He was open by April. Polito called me and it took me a year. So it really like depends
Wow.
on how long works.
Wow. Well, that's a great piggyback into this question because this is Jada Hardy. She's in 10th grade, and she asked when you're in the middle of a design and you know a client has a low budget, how do you stay under the budget?
Uh-huh. You use a lot of paint and not anything else. I mean, really the whole goal is knowing what the budget is, and you can pretty much work towards a budget. You have to manage expectations. Like a client can't come to you and show you a picture that costs $1 million and their budget is $1,000. Like that doesn't work. But you could look at that $1 million picture and say, okay, what about this do you like? And then you pull out the things that they really like and figure out kind of how to give them that same feel. Or you're honest with them and you just say, you know what, we can't get here, but I can do this and it's going to be great. And I can do it with basic finishes and basic, things I can buy off the shelf, and it's going to be unique to you. And so that's the whole goal, is making sure that it's, a unique product to every client.
Awesome. Well, I've got three more. This is Jakila Latiker, and she asked, "What is your favorite part of doing an interior design?"
I really love construction, honestly. I really, really enjoy being on the job site. I like problem solving. Um, I I am bored if a project doesn't have a lot of construction components to it. Um, it's a little bit of a puzzle, and so there's,
Yeah.
you're kind of always working through it. And then with construction, there's always like, I hate to say it, there's always something that's going to go wrong, but it's just like the nature of the world. Like you kind of have to know that something's going to adjust. And watching something that you've designed like come to life and kind of halfway through being like, oh my gosh, what have I done? But then like staying true to what your original vision was. It's a really neat process. So
Awesome. This is Azaya Ray. She's in 10th grade. She's a member of our band, and she asked, "What's the hardest part of your job?"
um I mean, I think a lot of designers would say clients, but I love clients. I think the hardest part of the job is that there's so many tiny details that go into it, and that like be making sure that you catch every single piece of what's happening. A lot of creative people, like I kind of live between a creative mind and a business mind, but I'm extremely ADHD. I'm very like all over the place. That's part of being a creative person. I don't think that that's weird or there's anything wrong with you for that. I'm very open about that. Um, but it's one of the reasons that I have a team of people. Like if it was just me, something would drop. And so you're literally handling so many different components, from like the hinges that go on a cabinet to like the huge light fixture to how the plumbing is done. I mean, so there's so many pieces. It's so easy to drop something. And the reality is you're going to, like, you're human, you're going to mess something up. You're going to forget something. And then it's the ability to like work within that is really important. But I think that is probably like the hardest part, is really making sure every detail is you've thought out. Because there's many times I'll walk into a space and be like, oh yeah, that thing. I didn't think about that. We got to figure that out. So
All right, so I got time for one more, and I like this one. This is Michaela Lumpkin. She's in 10th grade, one of our cheerleaders. And she asked, "What advice would you give to others if they wanted to start designing things?"
um mean, it's very basic, but just start designing things. Like it doesn't have to be something that is like this huge project. When I was young, I mean, this is very cheesy, but I used to like take things in the yard and put things together and design, I'd cut things out of magazines and create boards. I like would create my own version of doll houses with like things that like I cut out. I think that using your creativity and thinking through like how you would do stuff. You're not going to be good in the beginning. It's true. Like you're not like nobody, like I look at what I designed when I was young and I'm like, oh, like that probably could have been better. But it's a lot of practice. And so much of it is watching what other people do and paying attention because it's nothing. The wheel doesn't get reinvented that much. Like it's all kind of like what's been passed down and learning, and there's design standards and so much of it is knowing the rules and knowing where to break them. And you can't do that unless you've really studied it and really paid attention to it. So I do things that are as simple as like go to Barnes and Noble, pick up some magazines, look through some magazines, get on Pinterest. I hate Pinterest, but it's a real thing. Um, look around you, like pay attention, like when something doesn't work well in front of you, figure out why. Design is really just problem solving. And so I would just kind of always kind of be designing in your world.
Absolutely. Well, we're almost out of time, and we thank you so much for taking some time for us. I know you got a busy schedule today, but before we go, a couple things. First of all, tell us where to find your website where they can see all your work and contact you for any information about any projects.
Yeah, so my website is ferrisandco.com, and I have this very annoying name with 2 R's and 2 S's. So FERRISS and spelled out co.com. You can also just Google it and you should get there. But yeah, so I have a contact page, and if anybody's ever interested in interior design, I'm always happy to talk to people, or you can come shadow us and look at our space. So we encourage it. It's a great field. It is not only a female field, despite what people
Yeah,
think. A lot of
I
men
agree.
do it, and
I agree.
I
Absolutely.
actually think men are better at it than the women sometimes. So I don't understand. I think it's maybe because it's like such a specific, so small group of people that actually do it. They really love it. But I think it's a great field and it's a wonderful choice. And again, working within the industry in any way, I've loved, whether it's working in a restaurant or, working in the field, doing, electrical stuff for restaurants. I mean, it is a wonderful industry that has been really good to me.
Yeah, and then you answered my last question right there, so I appreciate it. I was gonna say why should they consider getting into this field, but you just told it all, and you're right. We need all kind of people to get into this field. So again, we thank you so much for joining us, Mary Sanders Ferriss, right here in Jackson, Mississippi. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, guys.
I talk to you soon, buddy.